Before we begin, please consider subscribing and enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon. With that out of the way, let's get started. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. After years of increasingly excessive handholding and linearity in Zelda games, Nintendo decided to let players completely loose in a vast open world with the Breath of the Wild, and it turned out to be an absolutely genius move on their part. Thanks to excellent world design, an unmatched sense of discovery and awe, and excellent systemic gameplay, exploration in Breath of the Wild was constantly exhilarating, and there's little doubt that that's going to be one of its sequel's biggest strengths as well. It remains to be seen how many new areas and locations Nintendo will add to Hyrule with the upcoming sequel, but given the fact that it's been in development for nearly 4 years at this point, one would assume that there's going to be plenty of new stuff to discover. Hollow Knight Silksong. It's hard to believe that Hollow Knight was developed by a studio as tiny as Team Cherry because that game was massive. The world of Hallow Nest was large, varied, and beautiful, and exploring every inch of that expertly crafted map was an absolute joy. With Hollow Knight Silksong, Team Cherry is taking us to the haunted kingdom of Farloom, and if that world is as fun to explore as Hallow Nest was, we're going to be in for one hell of an adventure. New World. Amazon hasn't had the best of times in the games industry in the short time they've been in it so far, but it's still hard to not be curious about their upcoming MMORPG, New World. Based on what they've said about it so far, it sounds extremely ambitious, and on paper, it seems like it might just be a legitimately great game. Of course, how a game sounds on paper and how it actually turns out are often two wildly different things, especially with an MMO, and especially with an unproven developer. But if New World can craft a gorgeous, massive world for players to explore the way it's promising, it's going to be a special game. Valheim. Valheim came out of nowhere really, and in a very short period of time, it's taken the industry by storm. Millions have already dived into the game following its recent early access launch, and it's easy to see why. The game delivers a large open world for players to explore at their own pace, and even with procedural generation, it offers enough variety in its biomes and enough strongly implemented mechanics at its core to keep players engaged. Valheim is already off to a great start, and with the promise of even more polish and more content in the months to come, it's bound to get even better. Horizon Forbidden West. Guerrilla Games created a truly unique and breathtaking world with Horizon Zero Dawn, which transported players to a lush, imaginative, and desolately beautiful post-apocalyptic setting. Horizon Forbidden West is going to expand the series, well, Horizons even further, and we couldn't be more excited about it. The chance to see more of this world, learn about its history and about its present, and explore more of its corners and secrets is a mouth-watering prospect unlike any other. Sansavara. There's a very good chance that you haven't heard of Sansavara. Unlike most other games on this list, it's a pretty low-key production from a smaller developer, but its premise has got us very intrigued. Set in a dying world buried under a sea of sand, this open-world action-adventure title will allow players to explore said seas and said world, either with a ship or on foot. With no markers to guide you, players are going to have complete freedom to head wherever they want, with the promise of deeper knowledge of the world and its lore around every corner. Sansavara is yet another game that sounds great on paper. Here's hoping it does justice to its concept. Elden Ring. From Software games almost always put a heavy focus on exploration, and thanks to incredible intertwining design and the promise of exciting discoveries no matter where you head, that exploration is always rewarded with something excellent. Elden Ring is not only a From Software game, it's also an open world game, which means exploration is going to be even more central to the experience. And given From Software's record, it's probably going to be even more rewarding and enjoyable. Of course, we have no idea when we'll actually get to play this game, so here's hoping we get a much needed update on it sooner rather than later. Halo Infinite. Halo Combat Evolved captured a sense of awe and wonder that instantly sparked a hunger for exploration. Owing to their largely linear design, Halo games haven't really done much to feed that hunger, but Infinite is finally taking that logical next step. 343 Industries is promising a much larger, much more open experience with Halo Infinite. Being let loose in a large map with the freedom to head in whichever direction you want and engage with activities at your own pace sounds like the perfect fit for a Halo game, so here's hoping Infinite manages to do that as well as we're hoping it will. Stalker II. Exploring the world of Stalker II is going to be a very different affair from many of the other games we've discussed here so far. The zone is going to be filled with unspeakable horrors and formidable dangers, which means every step you take may very well be your last. But that thrill is exactly what has the potential to make exploration in the game even more enjoyable. Developers GSC Game World are promising a massive open world environment, and that, combined with immersive sim and survival horror elements, is a truly exciting prospect. Resident Evil Village. With a few very obvious exceptions, Resident Evil games almost always put a heavy emphasis on exploration and backtracking, which is bolstered by the series' typically strong level design, and Resident Evil Village looks like it's going to crank things up to 11 in that area. Capcom is promising a large setting, and it seems like Village is going to place an even bigger emphasis on exploration than its predecessor. Soaking in the environments, discovering secrets and bits and pieces of narrative and lore, and learning more about what makes these locations tick has always been one of Resident Evil's biggest strengths, and we can't wait to do that with the Village's larger world. Biomutant. One look at Biomutant is enough to make us want to dive right into it and explore its world to our heart's content. With its mishmash of biomechanical thingamajigs, lush and vibrant environments, and weird mutated animals, it definitely seems like there's going to be no shortage of wondrous sights to seek out and gawk at in this game. After several delays, Biomutant is finally almost here, so we'll know soon enough if it can live up to its promise. Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker. Over the years, with multiple major expansions, Final Fantasy XIV has put together a gorgeous, massive world for players to explore, and it's only going to get larger. New Final Fantasy XIV expansions are always meaty chunks of new content, and Endwalker won't be bucking that trend. With the continent of Ilsabard, the region of Thavnair, new cities, Endwalker is going to take players to exciting new locations that we cannot wait to explore thoroughly and obsessively. Final Fantasy XVI. Single-player Final Fantasy games haven't really had purely fantasy settings for years now, but finally, after years of demands from fans, Square Enix is giving us another one of those with Final Fantasy XVI. Exploring a new Final Fantasy world is always an exciting prospect, but with its dark fantasy setting, it will become even more so with Final Fantasy XVI. The continent of Lysthia looks like a rich setting with many warring factions, which means there's plenty of room for variety in the locations players will get to visit. Whenever Final Fantasy XVI launches, we have no doubt in our minds that we're going to absolutely devour everything it will have to offer. Everwild. We know very little about Everwild right now, but what little Rare and Microsoft have shared with us has made it sound like a fascinating premise. Set in a unique and fantastical world full of beautiful sights to see and mystical creatures to encounter, Everwild seems like a game that would be perfect for anyone that wants to scratch that exploration itch. Here's hoping Rare and Microsoft show us more of this game soon. Starfield. It's an open-world RPG made by Bethesda Game Studios. Need we say more? This is a developer that has time and time again delivered expertly crafted massive open worlds that are ripe for endless and engaging exploration. Starfield offers all of that, but more excitingly, it offers all of that in a spacefaring sci-fi setting. The idea of setting off into space, landing on unique planets, and exploring the far reaches of space is an exciting one, and Starfield might just bring it to life the way very few other games have managed to do.